Alright, so before diving into the project, we need to take some essentials about the dictionaries in order to understand what's going to happen inside the first persistence or the data persistence phase or the data persistence layer, right? So let me add another folder, and this is going to be actually the project folder, so I'm just going to create it here. Let's call it CRS version 3. So I'm just going to add this folder right there, right? And let me create a folder inside of it. Let's create this folder as this thing, like this. And let's create another folder that's gonna have the actual project. Okay, so inside testing, I'm just gonna use my Jupyter notebook to test some stuff. Let's just call this testing version 2 because I already have a testing one here, IPyMB. Okay. Alright, so I'm just gonna start this with the conda interpreter. Now let's take some essentials about dictionaries. Okay, first of all, let's see how can we write a dictionary or any built-in data type into a file. And in this case, I'm talking JSON, and you're gonna know why in a minute why I'm talking JSON. And in the same time, read that dictionary or that data built-in data type. Okay, so what is the relation between dictionary and JSON? Because I think that you have heard this quite a lot, right? So what is the relationship between them? Typically, the format of a dictionary, or let's say the syntax of a dictionary, is the same as the syntax of some language that is called JSON. So it's the same as the syntax of JSON language, right? Or it's called JavaScript Object Notation. That's the abbreviation, okay? It's found to be that this syntax of the dictionaries in Python is the same as the dictionaries, or is the same as what we call objects in JSON. In JSON, objects or dictionaries are actually called objects, okay? But dictionaries in Python, on the other hand, are just similar to objects in JSON. They are the same, they have the same syntax. They same the same notation. That's why whenever we want to save a dictionary, the best file that you can, or the best file format that you can save a dictionary in, will be the JSON. It's not going to be a text file. It's just going to be a CSV, or a TSV is going to be a JSON file, because they share the same exact format. That's why we always relate JSON to dictionaries. So how does a dictionary look like? So I think we know this already. Okay, but let's just say that I have a dictionary that is called that has a username, and this is Ahmed, for example, and this is, I'm just gonna make this in a hierarchical way. So this is the password, and this is gonna be, this is a key value, this is key value here, this is another key value here, and so on. So this is gonna be email, AAA, like that. So this is my dictionary. Now how can we, let's talk about writing this dictionary into files. So this is writing, or in other words, this is what we call dumping. If you remember the text file writing, we had a method that is called write, right? And that method actually operated on a file that we opened. So we always say something like file.write, right? It's the same thing. So here we are going to talk about file processing one more time. So in file processing, you either want to write into a file, or you either want to read from a file, right? So first of all, let's open up a file object. Let's say that I'm going to open a file, all right? So if you want to open a file, I'm going to leave a video that is going to have extremely detailed stuff about file processing, but I just want to be to have this as fast as possible. Let's say I'm trying to open up a file in the folder that I'm in. This is the directory that I'm in. I'm in the directory that is called testing. Let's say that I'm trying to open up a file for reading that is called, for example, data.json, because remember, JSON is the format that we need to work our dictionaries with, or any other data type, as you're going to see in a minute with, right? So I want to open that file for the purpose of reading, which stands for R. Now, if you run this, you're gonna have this file error because it's gonna tell you that in this file, in this directory, there is no such file as data.json. Okay, so in order to read some file, right, we need to have, if you want to read, let's say that this is reading for the time being. This is reading. So if you want to read a file, first of all, the first step is opening that file in the mode, and this is the actual argument. This is the second argument. This is the mode, and this is the file name. It's always like that. An open function, open the file name, comma, the second argument is the mode. In the mode of reading, which is R. So in reading, if a file didn't exist, then it will throw an error. Okay, so how about we try writing for the time being? All right, since this is gonna give me a headache, let's just try the other one. Let's try to write. So I'm opening the file in the purpose of writing. So this is the mode is gonna change. Notice that whenever you do writing, notice this. Did you see this? There is a file that's called data.json has created for me. Okay, so if you are trying to read some file, you need to make sure that this file exists, or else it's gonna give you this error. If you are trying to write into a file, then Python is not gonna complain about this. If you are writing, if you are trying to open this file for the purpose of writing, then it's gonna create it for you. If it wasn't there. But what if it was there? Then nothing's gonna happen. It's just gonna be there, right? It's not gonna recreate it or anything. So if it wasn't there and you were trying to write, then it's gonna create it. If it was there, then it's just gonna use it. It's gonna open it. So now this open is gonna find this reference. It's gonna bend a reference to that data.json. So this is typically as saying that this is gonna return an object of the file data.json like that. Okay, so we have an object of the opened file, which is data.json. We have that object stored inside the file. Let's call this a file, right? Just for the sake of not confusing this with the actual file built-in keyword. So this a file, right? This corresponds to the actual object of the opened file, the data.json. Okay, so let's say inside, if you open, by the way, if you open data.json, you're gonna find that this is empty. Okay, so if you want to write some data into that file, you should say file dot. I'm sorry. If you want to write some data into that JSON file, remember that this is where the actual library, the actual JSON library kicks in. Okay. If you want to write some dictionary, writing some data type of some sort, you need to use the JSON library. Okay, so this is the first part. The first part is basically of the file processing part is opening the file in the mode, which is basically writing mode. Now the second part is basically trying to write the actual data type inside the JSON file. Right, inside the JSON file, which is in this case the data.json, which is in this case has an alias by that variable. It's stored inside that variable, that a file. Okay, so now we need the actual JSON library. So I'm just gonna say import JSON, and I'm just going to do this in a separate cell. So I'm just gonna say import JSON like that. Alright, and I'm going to say json.dump. Okay, this is basically the writing method. This is equivalent to saying .write if you are dealing with a text file or a CSV. So dump will take the actual variable and dump it inside that folder. Alright, okay, so into that file that we have opened in the writing mode, right? So this is the file that is actually binned or linked to the data.json file. So into that file, which corresponds to the data.json, I'm going to write that data, this dictionary, which is stored in the variable d, this dictionary. I'm going to write it into that file, which corresponds to data.json. So if I run this, and if I check data.json, Now let me do this one more time. Let's check data.json, and you're gonna find it have the same actual dictionary. If you press Control S, it's gonna be reformatted for you. All right. So this is the actual dictionary that we had here as the variable d. Okay. So dump does the writing for you. All right. What if I wanted to read this? Right. If you wanted to read this, then first of all, as we said, that you need to have this file there. For reading, the file needs to be actually existent, and don't worry about it because it's gonna be there, so this error is not gonna appear twice. So in order to read it, you can just say file open data.json in the reading mode, right? And you can just say json.load whatever inside that file, whatever content is inside that file, which is basically a link to data.json. Okay, and now let's try to print whatever it has. It's gonna print to you the same actual results that is existent in the data.json. So now I'm loading or reading whatever inside that file, right, which is data.json. Okay, there is another way to read and write, that's using something called the context manager, which is somehow it looks prettier than that, because I don't know, it looks to me a little bit convenient to use. So instead of using open and storing that object of the file, or storing that instance of the opened file inside the variable, I can just say, if I want to write, let's say that we have this object. Let's put that object there. Let's update it. Let's say that we, for example, we have a list of dictionaries. Every dictionary corresponds to a single account, a single user. So this is the other user. Okay, and this is anything arbitrary like that. And this is my list. Okay, so this is the list. Now I want to overwrite everything inside data.json. Now one downside in the JSON interaction or JSON files is that you cannot update. If you, maybe for example, let's say that you added another row. Let's say that inside this d variable, let's say that we have added another row for age, right? There is no way to update this actual entry. There is no way to update this pair just like that inside that JSON file. The only way possible, if you want to overwrite or update or append a new value or a new pair into a dictionary inside the data.json file, or inside any kind of JSON file, is that you need to dump everything again. You need to dump the whole content of in that variable again into data.json. So you're gonna overwrite everything in the data.json again. That's the one downside that we have. In text files, things are a bit uncomfortable for you whenever you try to read, because whenever you are reading, you are casting things into either lists or into either tuples. But whenever you try to append into a text file, you are appending like line by line. So appending or updating a text file is a little bit easier compared to reading from a text file. See, there is a trade-off in everything. The trade-off in text files is that the reading is hard, but the writing, appending or updating line by line is simple. The trade-off in JSON formats or JSON files is that the reading is simple. I'm just reading this by just one line. It's gonna return the whole object. So if I have this whole object that is being returned, I can save it as, for example, returned data or return dict, for example. And once I have this data returned, I can start indexing or start what we call indexing that dictionary. For example, if I want to get the email, right, I can get the email straightforward like that, right? So if you read the data from a JSON file, you have the data as it is, like as a Python data type. So there is no actual data type casting that is happening afterwards. So the reading is easy in JSON files, but the writing is going a little bit, for me, I think it's gonna be a performance hit, since you are dumping everything all over again and you're overwriting all over again everything. There is no way to update single rows, but anyways, that's the trade-off there. So for our case, I think it's a little bit convenient to use JSON, because whenever you read, you're just gonna read immediately. And I really think that reading, even in your case in the chatbots, most of the time, most of the project wouldn't really rely on writing. So don't worry about writing now. The most important thing is that reading happens really easily. Okay, and as a matter of fact, if you tried reading, if you tried appending that dictionary into a text and converting everything, reading everything pair by pair, and assign them into pairs, evaluate them into actual expressions that corresponds to pair, then put them in dictionaries, then append them into a list, the reading process will be extremely expensive. It's going to be extremely costly if you are using a text file. Okay, so let's just stick with JSON files. So let's take the other method, which is the manager, the context manager. Let's say that I want to open this the same data to JSON in the writing mode, like that. But now, instead of saying file equal, I'm just gonna say with this file open, with this link to data.json has been initiated, right? As the following file. Now that's the only difference. Instead of just saying a file at the beginning, I'm just saying that I'm opening that file as a file, right? So inside that scope is, listen, that this is just a block. It's just a code block here after that colon. It's like a for loop or an if statement. We have a code block inside that file. Okay, so once we open that file as anything, this is just an alias. This is just a variable name. It can be as if, as g, as whatever. We can do the following. If you want to write, we can just say json.dump the current data that we have updated, which is d here in this case. Let's update it into that opened file that we called a file. All right, remember the content of data, the JSON is going to be changed in a minute, right? So if we write this and open data, the JSON, and hit Control S, you're going to see that this is the new list of tuples. So typically, whatever you store, it's not always about dictionaries, by the way. If you store any data type, any built-in data type in Python inside the JSON file, it's going to be stored as it is. Let's say that I'm storing this list, just empty list like that. Okay, or a list that has any numbers, right? Any number of elements, not dictionaries. Let's try to append or dump this data into the file data.json that is opened as a file. And let's check the data.json. We're gonna have this list as it is. It's the same thing. This is not a string, by the way. This is the actual list that has been dumped, right? And the reading is just a symbol. I'm going to create another context manager for reading and say that I'm going to open that data.json file for the purpose of reading as a file. Now, let's say now I'm going to load whatever content that is existent inside data.json, which is aliased by a file, and I'm just gonna set it or dump it or assign it into a variable that's called list or L. All right, and let's check the list. What does the list have? Notice that the list has the actual list, and this is not a string. You can actually directly index it with anything, and it's gonna work. Okay, so this is reading and writing into a JSON file. All right. One thing that I want to introduce again is called the keywords, which is basically stands for the keyword arguments. So this is the keywords, right? So what are these? Let's say that we have a function. Let's say that this is function, and this function takes a keyword arguments. It takes a couple of keyword arguments, right? So I'm just gonna say that this takes keyword arguments like that, keywords, right? By the way, this can be any word. It doesn't have to be keywords, right? But the most important part is this 2 stars right there. So this 2 stars is saying that if I am passing to you a scattered kind of keyword arguments, if I am passing scattered keyword arguments like this, for example, let's say that I'm going to call func and I'm going to pass scattered keyword arguments, meaning that I'm going to pass the first keyword arguments as un, that's this variable name. I'm going to pass it as Ahmed, and I'm going to pass another keyword argument pair, which is in this case a variable or parameter password, which is in this case something like that. And I'm going to pass another keyword argument which has the email parameter or variable that has AA like this. So if I'm passing scattered keyword arguments or scattered pairs like that, the star star should do the following. The star star should form these scattered keyword arguments into an actual dictionary. Okay, so let's say that I'm passing these keyword arguments. What the star star will do is that it's gonna take this keyword arguments and just form a dictionary out of them. Okay, a dictionary out of each pair. Okay, so let's print the keyword arguments and see if this is actually now the keyword arguments after the star star. This should actually be a dictionary to prove that I'm saying something wrong, to prove that my theory is correct. Okay, so let's run this and you're gonna see that the actual keyword arguments after the zipping, if you may say, via these two stars has been actually a dictionary. This is actually a dictionary. You can check actually the type from there. So the two stars, what does it do? What are we doing here? So what the two stars is doing is that it's zipping these scattered keyword arguments into an actual dictionary. Okay, we are going to use this. That's why I'm choosing this concept here.